Hey, this
Yeah, you're saying something.
no, the have you started sharing?
Yeah, we are live.
Okay, awesome.
Hi. Good morning, Roshan, and good morning to everyone who has joined us on this fine Sunday morning. So Roshan just asked me to start the roundup today asking how the weather is. So Roshan, what's the Bangalore weather? Let's do a weather round.
Bright and sunny outside,
Uh,
and just the perfect weather to go for a little bit of a run and maybe do deadlifts. Yeah,
is that your plan for the long weekend?
that's my plan for now. So I'm trying to trick myself into getting a bit of a workout done by wearing some workout clothes. So hopefully I go for a run and don't sit on my ass and read a book or something like that. So
All right. So last roundup, right? I mean, I just recall last roundup you said you're gonna break your record for fasting, and we would be doing this roundup during.
didn't happen, man. Didn't happen. I had a bit of a COVID scare, so I had to get myself tested, and so I had to break my fast. So I could only do about 3 days. But yeah, it is what it is. So happy Vijay Dashmi to everyone who's watching. Auspicious day. Good enough for some startup news. So let's get started, Gunjan.
Yeah. So before we do that, Roshan, let's talk about the episodes, right, which we put out
Yeah,
last week. So
yeah.
one with Ketang, we spoke to about investing in InsurTech, and the other one with RV or Rekuram Varadharaj, right, with who we spoke about building in healthcare. So what were some of your key takeaways from these conversations?
To me, both of these episodes were fantastic primers on how to build in those domains, right? So, Shwetang spoke a great deal about InsurTech. I mean, he gave a lay of the land, and he's had a vantage point because, I mean, he was a corporate innovation guy. So he has been with a large insurer before, working on innovation, connecting them with startups, and so on, right? So, he's got that vantage point. He's been an entrepreneur himself. And he spoke a great deal about embedded finance, how, I reference that Angela Strange article each time I think, someone from FinTech or InsurTech comes on, which is the whole spiel about every company can be a FinTech or an InsurTech company. And, Shwetank and I went into great detail on that front and spoke about embedded finance and such. And that was a really, really interesting sort of a, deep dive for me, and RV's podcast was again a deep dive into healthcare, right? So it's a very complex domain, very many different stakeholders, very different priorities, so on and so forth, and literally you have people's lives at stake. So building in that domain is not the easiest thing, but really the way RV looks at it, right? Very methodical, very scientific, so to speak, and very rational about things. Seriously, both these episodes were fantastic deep dives into the domains, and anyone even mildly interested in them should absolutely go and check it out.
Right. I especially loved how in Shwetank's episode, he gave a very basic outlook towards what a VC looks for in early stage startups, right?
Yeah,
How to scale back, and he got very like he drew a very clear picture
yeah,
what he asked from a VC side and what sort of startups to go. VC investable businesses, we
yeah,
spoke, right?
absolutely.
And regarding building in healthcare with RV, in one of your tweets, you mentioned that healthy it was ahead of its time and
Hmm.
eventually is. So can you elaborate on that a bit?
So Healthy's approach is to sort of centralize all of the data and then turn it into useful information. Not a lot of people have the expertise or the knowledge to read blood reports and make sense of it. Not a lot of us know, what parameters should be how much and so on, right? So typically, what we do is if we get some of these, we just like hand it off to some doctor, uncle, or auntie of ours, and get their opinion on what this means, right? So Healthy uses a lot of data to sort of tell you what you're doing with your health, and it also very seamlessly connects the ecosystem like insurance providers. I think they're doing outpatient as well right now, so hospitals, doctors, clinics, and so on, right? So think of it as a centralized dashboard for your health. So in that sense, I mean, their vision from even 6 years back, from when I know RV, 6 7 years back, in fact, is phenomenal. I mean, they were way ahead of their time at that point. I remember looking at the dashboard and thinking, okay, who will really uh, think of this, right? So it was ahead of its time at that point, and it's still, in many ways, I think it's a very visionary thing to do, really.
Right. All right, so we'll move on. We'll get started with the recent fundings from the week, right? First, we had Techion. This is by the former CIO of Tesla. His company crossed a valuation of $1 billion. So that's the latest entrant into the unicorn club. It recently raised a funding of 150 million and as part of a Series C, if I'm not wrong. And yeah, the founder is Jay Vijayan, right? We'll revisit this. Let's just cover all the funding news first. Then we have this new company, Pepper Content, who's trying to democratize content creation for everyone. So kind of touches on the gig economy. It raised a funding of 4.2 million in Series A, led by Lightspeed India. And then we have Mind, another, I would say, ahead of its time startup. It was featured in TechCrunch recently, and it was for its work it is doing on clearing out the data privacy issues around GDPR and CCP. I guess I'm getting the name wrong. So Roshan, bunch of stuff happening across domains. What is your understanding from past week?
So Techion is very interesting. Jay Vijayan is a former Tesla guy, and I mean, you speak about founder market fit, right? I mean, this is as close as it gets. This is a person who's built for that market, knows what he's doing, knows how to scale these technologies very intimately, and Techion is again a very interesting solution. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that, and it's SaaS, and I said this before as well. So SaaS deals are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're just getting a sneak preview of that. I mean, this is what you can expect in 2021.
Right. So one question related to Techion, right? I mean, in one of our earlier episodes, we were talking about founder market fit and also the founding team market fit, right? And if you look at Jay Vijayan's past experience, before joining Tesla in 2011, he used to work with Oracle and VMware. Then he joined Tesla as the CIO, and now Techion is essentially a CRM system for automotive dealerships.
Hmm.
And within just a span of 3 4 years, the startup has become a unicorn. So, I mean, any comments on this founder market fit, team fit?
Yeah, so as I just said, I mean, if Jay Vijayan is the guy to build for this market. I mean, if he doesn't build it and if he doesn't get funded, then there isn't many others who would sort of fit the bill, right? So, founder market fit is extremely important because you see a lot of people coming into certain domains where they have prior existing experience, and they just know these problems very intimately. It's good to have an outside-in approach sometimes, but always, I mean, it helps to have these intimate details. Someone who may not know healthcare will think that, hey, why are things this way, and they will try to revisit everything, but things are a certain way for very intimate details that you may not know as an outsider. So there is a good balance to kind of strike between having an outside in approach and having that domain expertise. And founder market fit is really essential in something like automotive, for example. You have to know. I mean, this is not a consumer product. This is something where domain experience matters. So yeah, it's supremely important in this case, and that's the validation that he has got as well, right? So in terms of building a successful business.
Right. Okay, let's talk about Pepper a bit. So Pepper, as I mentioned earlier, it's on the mission to democratize content, right? So this is essentially touching upon the whole gig economy, freelance gigs marketplace, right? And we
Mhm.
have seen during the lockdown, the gig economy market is really booming. In fact, we spoke with um, Mr. Dave, right, from TapChief, Neil Dave,
Mhm.
right? Even TapChip is working in a similar space. So how do you see this scaling forward, right?
Yeah, so I have this pet theory of mine that the really best talent will end up with agents and agencies. similar to what you see with let's say Hollywood or Bollywood or whatever, right? Where agents and agencies represent these people and they go and seek out work for them. I have this pet theory of mine that going forward, the 10x engineers, the 10x marketers, and so on, will become similar to that. They will move on from one gig to another and charge a premium for the amount of impact that they can cause, not for the hours that they invest. You know, so well, I mean, so you're going to see a lot more of these platforms coming up, which connect talent with companies looking to hire, and considering that all of us are remote, considering that virtualization is going to kick in at some point of time, and people have accepted that work can get done in a very distributed fashion. You're going to see more of this. You're going to see absolutely a lot more of this, and people are going to think of work in a very gig-like fashion. Now that has its obvious advantages in terms of scale. For example, you can hire from anywhere. I mean, sitting here, I could hire someone in Romania, for example, right? It has you know it has advantages in terms of not being able to, not requiring to invest in office infrastructure and all of those things. But it is going to be challenging. It's not going to we're not going to change. The folly of our times is to think that fundamental changes don't have fundamental consequences. you know so today, for example, we have all of the world's information in our pockets. I mean, obviously, that's going to have a consequence of some sort, right? I mean, not just good, even bad as well. So, um, I don't know what that is, but then I mean, it is the way of the world right now. That's how it's going to trend going forward.
All right. So next up, we have this post by Narayan, right? Who we
Yeah,
interviewed, his co-founder and CEO of Avaz.
yeah,
And we also have this article by Deepak Abbott, who is the
yeah.
former VP of product Paytm. Both are talking about the various hurdles that Google Play Store has in place, right?
Right.
In terms of the customer experience or the policies, right? And both have written a strongly worded articles.
Yeah. No, so Deepak's article this morning was an antidote to what Narayan was saying. And, this shit keeps happening again and again, man. I mean, I was really, really irritated when I saw this post because, okay, I mean, Dream 11, you could sort of say it's gambling or whatever, right? Some version of it. I mean, nobody's making any allegations on that front, but let's call it what it is. It's a little controversial.
Right.
What about Narayan's app? What about Avaz? Avaz is something that helps autistic kids, right? And for them to be sort of removed from the Play Store without any notice, and then very opaque processes and stuff like that. I mean, it's just very frustrating. How do you build a business based on something like that? It's like there is this school bully who comes and robs who comes and takes your lunch away from you, for no particular reason, right? And you have to go and pacify the guy to get it back. Well, I mean, the time of pacification is over. The time of pacifying is over. At some point of time, someone's going to turn and kick his ass, and that's what's going to happen actually. So Deepak's article this morning talks about how to build an Atmanirbhar app store, and I think people are going to get onto it. I mean, he suggests a few different ways, like a mobile web version, for example. Like people like Paytm have tried it, and download through a browser like Dream 11 has tried it. And I think to my mind, the most viable, feasible one is the one where you go and tie up with OEMs and do a separate store as such, right? And that is going to happen because I think Google and Apple are just pissing off people left, right, and center with this. And it's about time that people also realize that a lot of this power is centralized. I mean, if you look at the App Store or the Play Store, I mean, there are many. It's no longer just a small developer platform, right? I mean, you have billion dollar businesses being built on that store, and it's all subject to the vagaries of that store, right? I've said this before. I would hate for the Play Store to unbundle. I would hate for App Store to unbundle because of some regulation. If it unbundles naturally, then good for them. But they have to be proactive about this. And one way is to not dick around and piss people off. I mean, this Play Store thing is just a joke right now. We had Snehanshu talk about it. We had Bisu talk about it as well. And you're going to see this indigenous app store or like an unbundling of the Play Store happen sooner than I think Google and Apple seems to realize.
So I want to touch upon two things over here, right, before we move on. One is firstly, Google Play Store and App Store enjoy the market dominance, right? So how would you even like by partnering with OEMs, which already is happening? Samsung has its own app store, Huawei has its own app store, Oppo has its own app store, right? But we are not seeing great adoption in that space yet, even though this problem exists. That's one. And second is how would you get the whole ecosystem migrated? Because that is like
See,
come
it's yeah, I mean, it's not going to be easy. It's definitely not going to be easy, but it's a stock versus flow kind of a thing, right? I mean, if you're going to trend in that direction, then it's going to the pieces are going to someone's going to put the pieces together, right? That's exactly what Deepak talks about. The fact that it's not going to be easy for sure. You know, you have to build that developer base. You have to provide for them infrastructure, analytics, enable them, train them. Then you have regulation, policy, all of those things. I mean, it's a so Play Store is a 10-15 years old, right? I mean, it's a very very complex thing. I mean, I'm not saying something that it's not an app or something that could be built overnight, right? It's not technology. It's not just about technology. It's a lot about community, about regulation, about many different things coming together. It's not trivial at all, and that's the point of Deepak's article as well. But oftentimes when there is some sort of an imbalance, it just takes 3 or 4 incidents like this for people to come together and do something different. you know um, Today arguably you use 8 or 10 apps which are the most important apps for you right now, right? Let's say those 8 or 10 apps or even 4 or 5 apps are on a different Play Store or a different app store. Why would you not choose that? Why would you not go there and discover a few more things that you could do, right? So it's just that. And I mean, tech businesses tend to get monopolistic at some points of time, and that's because there's a huge amount of leverage and stuff like that. And the nature of tech is that it bundles and unbundles, and I think we're at the curve where this has to unbundle. This is going to happen, right? So someone's going to figure out what to do, and it's going to take shape for sure.
Okay. So, folks, whoever wants to like understand more about this space, about the App Store and Play Store marketplaces, do check out our episode with Snehanshu, with Bisu, and Narayan. We have spoken at length at that. Okay, so next up, Roshan, we have this tweet by Chamath, right? You wanna take us through that?
Yeah. So this is a pretty interesting tweet, right? I mean, it's at the background of Twilio acquiring one of the companies. I forgot which company that was. I think they acquired them for about $2 billion or so, right? Um, and I think it's interesting because given how the public markets have played out this year in the US, uh, so what his point is that the really aggressive CEOs or the really aggressive founders will use that leverage they have with their stock valuation and go out and acquire companies. And to my mind, the larger point is that I mean, if you have the leverage, you really absolutely have to use it, especially in a down market. So if you are a startup, for example, that is doing relatively well, then go out and hire the best talent. Acquire your competitors and whatever. Don't put it off for later. Arguably, at Twilio's scale, I mean, Twilio I think is probably about, I don't know, tens of billions of dollars in market cap, I suppose, right? And it's a public company, large company, whatever. But you don't really have to wait to that scale to start thinking of these things. You have to be aggressive, and why not? A down market is when you get a lot of value for very cheap, and if it makes strategic sense to you, then you should go out and absolutely be aggressive at this time. So hire the best quality talent you can get at this point of time. Go and acquire or consider acquiring solutions that will augment your product, so on and so forth. So I think that is the spirit of it. And he talks about how true CEOs or true founders who really believe in their product do this, right? And it is, $2 billion is not cheap, but arguably, I mean, it's cheaper than ever before if your stock is valued as much. So why not use that, and why not grow through acquisitions, right? So that is the central point, and we should link to this. It's a fantastic thread. I mean, definitely something to consider.
I mean, kind of reminds me of Facebook's acquisition of Instagram, right? That was for $1 billion back a couple of years, and this acquisition was for 3.2 billion, and the company was Segment.
Yeah, so Facebook's yeah, see, M&A is it's a very on hindsight, everything can be amazing and everything can be shit, right? I mean, you don't know, right? You don't know how things go. But then Facebook has had amazing history of acquisitions, right? If you look at Instagram, Oculus, for example, Oculus is going to be the big thing, and today Instagram is, like, I think, the primary revenue generation vehicle for Facebook, right? And then you're going to see this happen with WhatsApp as well. Now, 19 billion sounds very big, but I mean, if I'm going to make 100 billion on the back of that, then that doesn't, really matter that much, right? So, I mean, or it seems like, a sensible investment. But then, how do you make that 19 billion upfront, right? I mean, so yes, M&A is a sort of a is a I would say it's a very specialized sort of a thing, and very difficult to, kind of predict some of these things. But it's something that organizations should actively think of, because you don't have to build everything, you don't have to integrate everything. You could just acquire some of these things.
Okay. So next up, we have this Udit Narayan's first tweet. And honestly, I did not know Udit Narayan was not on Twitter before while making this deck. So this was referring to Cred's ads, right?
Yeah.
So I know we are at splits as to what the ads were, but what were your views on it?
So this is just the funniest series of ads I've seen in a long time. I mean, a huge shout out to my friend Devaya PB, who's behind these ads. And I was just having this chat with him, and I think they're on a mission to kill off all of our '90s memories. With Bappi Lahiri, with Udit Narayan, Anil Kapoor, and all of these guys. And it's just I put out a tweet that, I just, growing up in the 90s, I thought all of this was cool. And Cred is showing us all of this are ironically cool, right? I don't know which of this is true, but it's just nice. I mean, it's just fantastic to see this, it's kind of innovative, lateral sort of thinking. And it's also bold, I don't know how much it, uh, so Cred is trying to be like a consumer, sort of like a niche consumer, or a creamy level consumer sort of a play here with credit cards and whatnot, and loyalty and whatnot. So I guess it kind of makes sense with their whole brand ethos of, not it's not for everyone, it's for a select few of them. But man, I couldn't care less. I really couldn't care less. It's so entertaining. I'm just like wondering what will come next. So which of our next idols, '90s idols, will they destroy? So it's just fantastic that way.
Which one? Who do you definitely not don't want to see be destroyed?
Uh, I don't know. '90s Dravid, I guess. Yeah, don't destroy Dravid. I mean, Dravid making a caricature of himself would be tough to digest for a South Indian like me. I don't think that'll happen. Dravid, then I could think of a few actors, right? I mean, hmm.
So Dave, if you're listening,
Yeah, I mean, it's better if it's a surprise.
so Dave, if you're listening to this, please make a note. All right. So next we have another tweet, right, that talks about the two pizza rule.
Yeah,
Right.
this is hilarious. Yeah, so this is just so hilarious because some of these. Okay, so this is a thread that you absolutely have to check out, uh, um, where Prashant basically talks about how he was talking to this VC associate, and that guy was giving him gyan about how. You should build teams that are two pizza strong, right? So, which is essentially like
Five.
small teams or good enough to survive on two pizzas. But our man did not know that pizzas in the US are like large AF, right? Compared to the Domino's pizzas we get here in India. And so he was basing it off of calculations on that, right? And this happens so much. I mean, with startups, especially, all these cliches of fail fast and you know uh, those kind of things. I mean, it's just like, for someone who's been around for 12 years, right? I mean, you look at this, you listen to some of this stuff, and it's like, it's not coming from a place of practice. It's coming from some arbit thing they said, or arbit thing that someone said or they heard, and stuff like that, right? So it's just a fantastic illustration of that point, that don't buy into the BS. I mean, like, really stress test all of these things. In some ways, I mean, everything smart that can ever be said has already been said. But why people continue to discover these things is because it's a very YMMV situation. It's a your mileage may vary kind of situation. There is no manual to go out and build stuff out yourself. I mean, you have to sort of revisit this, for your particular journey as such. And I'm not saying that, everything that I'm not saying that you should I'm not saying that you should look at things, everything with fresh eyes. Obviously, you should leverage some of the knowledge that has come before, but you have to sort of filter it for your own context. Otherwise, you'll end up doing stupid shit like this, not knowing pizza sizes between US and India, and then saying, hire a team which can suffice on two pizzas. So this is a fantastic thread. Hilarious, absolutely hilarious.
Right. Next up, we have Vembu's wisdom. So this one talks about being specialized in one particular niche of work, right? And then he goes on to elaborate on that. Please give us some gyan from your side.
So Vembu sir again, is one of those threads which kills modern consensus. There's this book called Range by uh, David something Epstein, not sure, right? That I've been meaning to read, and a lot of people, including our colleague Harish Vaidyanathan, recommended this. And it's about generalists, right? I mean, it's about how generalists are more relevant now than ever before. I think this whole specialization and compartmentalization of skills and expertise is very unnatural to us as humans. Because if you think of us as as fathers, as sons, as as friends, as whatever else, um, or even in terms of our hobbies and interests. I mean, there's probably four or five things that you could be mildly interested in. There'll be one or two things that you're really passionate about, and so on, right? We're always multi-dimensional creatures, and it always struck me as something very unnatural that we choose to hyper specialize in our area of work. And arguably, in some cases, it is merited, right? If you're doing some deep science research or whatever, obviously, I mean, you can't be solving for everything under the sun. But for everyone else, I mean, I kind of think that there should be an overlap with plenty of adjacent, if not non-overlapping fields. Because we are generalists. Humans are generalists. Humans are not very specialized creatures that one person will hunt and one person will farm and one person will do something else, right? So we are very generalized in that sense. And also, this kind of specialization causes a lot of um, um, I would say it causes a lot of risk. It's one thing to say that everyone should know everything, and then another extreme to say that, okay, this person will know only this and nothing else about it, right? Nothing else around it. I think there is a median somewhere, and we've over the years, especially in the last 10, 20 years, I think we've skewed a lot more towards over specialization. And I think a correction is long due. You know, um, and I think if you look at startup roles, in a sense, I mean, you're seeing this, right? People are hiring for a lot more growth marketers, not really digital marketers or content marketers, right? Um, yeah. So yeah, my advice is just focus on being little full stack. Yeah.
Even Jesse spoke about this at length.
Yeah.
Link that. Okay, so Roshan, before we end, let's talk about our upcoming episodes. So next week we'll have this interviews with Sahiba Sethi and Shrikant Soundarajan.
Yeah.
Right? I already had a conversation with them. We'll be releasing the episodes on Tuesdays and Thursday. Right. So before that, what can the audience expect?
Yeah, so these are very different episodes, I would say. So Sahiba is the CEO of Hello Meets, and she's built a fantastic community of people centered on product, marketing, engineering, etc. Right, and I've organized meetups before, and I can tell you that it's not a trivial thing. It's super difficult to get people together, and to be able to do that, 800 times or so in the last 5 years across the world is no mean feat. I mean, so I spoke to her about how to build a community. What are the sort of essence to it? How do you engage this community on a regular basis and keep them engrossed and stuff like that, which I think is relevant for anyone, because you sort of have to build a community around your product, around your service, or whatever it is that you're engaged in. So if you look at Google, for example, they have their own developer community. If you look at Salesforce, they have Trailblazers, so on and so forth, right? At some point of time, you're going to have to look at it. And the earlier you think of it and the earlier you sort of build towards it, it makes it better, you know. Um, I kind of say that, you have to have your own clan, for your product or service, because people should be associated with you because of you, not because of any product or service or whatever. That should become detailed. That is like the ultimate goal for any marketer, right? Look at Apple, for example. People buy Apple because it's Apple, not because of the clock speed or whatever specs there are, right? So yeah, kind of build a clan or kind of build a community, and I think that episode is going to be useful from that perspective. Shrikant, I had a lot of fun talking to. I mean, he has been there, done that. He's seen it all, So he's been with tech startups for north of 30 years, and we spoke about this whole evolution of DevOps as such, right? And DevOps as we know it. Um, we spoke about SaaS and so on and so forth. And really, I mean, it was like a kid in a candy store experience for me to just talk to him and understand how they built some of those things. I mean, it wasn't easy building in the 80s and the 90s. Uh, so yeah, I mean, that was fantastic. That was really fantastic. I got to brush up a little bit on my engineering knowledge, and yeah, so and he's an investor right now, and again, one of those people uh, who you should have on board, considering the background he's got. He has seen many different technology curves, evolutions, and in fact, we should link to his article on that. So if you are building a deep tech or a SaaS startup, you should definitely consider Shrikant, because arguably, I mean, he's got most amount of background compared to plenty of people out there. Yeah, so a couple of really good, interesting episodes coming up.
All right. So with that, we come to the end of this week's roundup. I know people have a long weekend ahead, a lot of plans coming up. I'm sure you will also have. But I guess this actually left us a lot of interesting thoughts to think about. Right? We'll be discussing more about this on a few Twitter threads in the week. And meanwhile, do check us out in our social media. Let us know what you thought of this roundup or what we should discuss in the next roundup. Be open to that. And yeah, I guess this is the end then.
All right. Thank you so much, guys, and happy Vijayadashmi. God bless.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a great
Bye.
week.